Welcome to the V2V podcast. I'm Shorts, or Alexei. Today, we are doing another part of the Survivor series, and I'm going to be taking a little bit of a different turn and talking with an ex-staff member of Sunset Bay Academy, which is located in Mexico, and seems to have affiliation with WWASP. Hi, Erik, and thank you for doing this.
Hi, Alexei. Thank you for having me on the show, and I'm more than glad to come forward and answer any questions that you have.
Awesome. Why don't we start with how you got involved with Sunset Bay Academy and, your sort of story. And I'm just going to let you talk.
Okay. Well, to start off with, even though the schools in Mexico, at the time I was a U.S. citizen. I was living in Tijuana. I was attending the Universidad Autónoma de Baja California, which is the UABC, right there in Tijuana. I was in my sixth semester there. And this was around 2009, I believe, August, September. And I was out of work thanks to the economic crisis that was hitting at the time. And I went on a website called Empleo Nuevo, which is a site, it's like a job search site there in Baja California. And I saw a listing for an English teacher. Okay, now I didn't have any English teaching certifications. However, my grammar, my understanding of the language is pretty impeccable. So I went ahead and I sent in my resume. The ad did not mention exactly what type of school it was to begin with. And I got this reply within a few hours. Basically, thinking come in for an interview. It did mention it was a boarding school, which that's still not going to bring necessarily a red flag because you have all kinds of boarding schools. So I set up the interview. I went in, and at first I was interviewed by Nadia Corab, who was the academic coordinator at the time, and then later by Cristina Heredia, who was the daughter of the owner, who supposedly is dead. That's another side thing at this time. But I was interviewed by both of them, and later I spoke briefly with Amy Ritchie, who was, I think, we had a head of therapy. She was the head of therapy, and she had previously worked at Ivy Ridge in New York. But anyway, she seemed to immediately say, yeah, this is good to hire because I was a Coast Guard veteran, and I guess she was in the Marine Corps. So evidently they had profiled me, working in a military background or whatnot. So anyhow, then they told me that they were troubled teens, that some of them had done some heavy stuff, like everything from assault with a weapon, heavy drug use, to run-of-the-mill behavioral issues. So, okay, so I heard that, and I was like, so they said that's not a regular school. I would be dealing with them in the classroom to be careful that the kids will manipulate and blah, 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 blah. So, anyhow, I started working there Monday through Saturday. I was there weekdays from about 7:30 until 2:30 or 3 in the afternoon, from which I had to leave and go to my classes in the afternoon at university.
Okay.
And on Saturdays, I worked from like 10 to 3.
Okay.
So anyhow, I started working there, and there was nothing immediately apparent when you start working there, at least in the academic side. I mean, you've got all the kids are under some rigid discipline. I knew immediately it was clear there were rules. They were grouped into families, and the girls and the boys were not allowed to interact unless they were upper level. Necessary. And they had this set up. There was probably about 26 computers in the computer lab, and they had this homeschool program set up. So the kids would go in, and they would log in, and they would have to complete certain lessons according to the grade level they were on. And when I was in there, in that computer lab, any of them could call me over, and I would help them understand the material. And originally it was just going to be English, but there was, I guess the science teacher ended up quitting. Unfortunately, I have somewhat of a knowledge of it, so I ended up helping him on science and civics and history and like a whole load of stuff. Well, as time went on, they were calling me over to help them, they started like talking about their experiences there. And a couple of them mentioned how they had tried to escape.
Were you alone with them in the class? Were you allowed to be alone so that they could tell their story to you?
Well, it was not literally how would I describe it? The computers are all next to each other, like in a computer lab, but they would be speaking in a low voice. And they had chaperones. They had chaperones. So yeah, there was times when the chaperones would usually sit up by the teacher's desk. They didn't really get up and go around. So yeah, there was plenty of opportunity to speak to them, not all the time, depending on
Right.
There was. I shouldn't mention specific names, but at first, one student was telling me about their escape because they had been beaten and pissed on and humiliated and other stuff. And at first, I took it with a grain of salt because I guess they had shown me some files. And yes, there were not all the students, but I would say maybe a fifth of them actually did have some really trouble, like gang involvement and all this other stuff. So I took it with a grain of salt, but I didn't totally discount it. I would listen to them. I wouldn't, okay, I would just listen, and then I would even maybe ask a couple questions. So then what happened? Well, what did you do when you got out? And because a couple of them had escaped, and he said that they got distracted and joined some street party there in Rosarito. It's a tourist town. I'm like, why did you do that? You should have, taken the combi or the van that goes by there, Tijuana or whatnot. So anyway, so they got caught, they got brought in, and I guess they had the tar beaten out of them, and were pretty much locked down for a month or so. So this was the first person who was telling me about it. So what I would do is when somebody was, another person would be telling me this place sucks, and I would ask them, so what do you know about these two people and what happened? And they would corroborate the history. They would corroborate the story. So then I knew at this point, something, this was about a month in, that something was not quite.
Can you try and keep your mouth close to the microphone, my friend? Just so I can hear? Thanks.
Yes, sorry.
It's okay.
Anyhow, I decided to, while having lunch with staff members, one was Edgar, the PE coach, and he was kind of like the enforcer too. I guess he was the one that really gave the beat downs. Edgar Medina. And so he was there. Nadia, who was my supervisor, she was the academic coordinator, was there, and I kind of brought up a tough love. And I did it on purpose. I said, so sometimes you just have to knock some sense into them, right? And devil's advocate. And I got this kind of nod. I was like, yes. So that kind of told me that there was something going on. So at this point, it's not like I have any solid proof. Yeah. Also, the job did not pay so well and all that, but I was actually being paid with a U.S. bank account, even though I was working in Mexico.
What U.S. bank?
Wells Fargo.
Okay.
Wells Fargo, and I might have an image of the checks that was written. Even I could maybe if I find them, I got to go through my Gmail and see if I can find it. But
that would be awesome.
Anyhow, there's no benefits, so they were totally violating the national laws here. And at the same time, I was actually not legally working there because my visa. I was also doing consulting for a firm down there, basically paperwork and translation. So I was legally in the country, had legal permission to work, but not there. You had to and the place did not want me on paper. It was being there for some reason. They wanted to keep everything under the table using. Well, as time goes on, I started piecing things together, and as a teacher, what I started doing is I contacted the Ayn Rand Institute.
Mm-hmm.
And asked for books like the Anthem and the Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. And the reason being, I know I'm not an objectivist, okay, I'm not part of that cult or anything, but there are some ideas in her novels that I figured that would help the students out as far as their self-worth or their individuality. So I actually brought it to the supervisor. Hey, I'll take this on, this extra work. I got these books donated. Can I sign them? And they said, sure, go ahead. So I started doing that. Evidently after a while they noticed that I was really putting in a lot of effort with the tutoring and the feedback and all that, and also with the SAT class. I did have time with them outside of the computer lab with some of them, because they would take SAT prep classes upstairs, and that's where I got to actually see some of the rest of the facility. And there was no supervision. However, there were about maybe 10 students in front of me, and I was the only one there, the only adult there in the room. And I would give the class, and they would practice, and I would, and there, of course, nothing was ever said, but you could kind of tell that they were relieved to not be around the other staff members.
Okay.
Like they literally, like even they told me in private when I was a kid, like, I look forward to going to SAT class and all that. And I think that was kind of a break from being directly under the eyes of the chaperones and some of the ones that were causing the abuse and all that.
Sure.
Let me tell you a little bit about what I know of their standard operating procedure. I remember you asked me about grievances and all this stuff.
Yeah.
The basic type of punishment that they had there is called intervention. It's basically like being in solitary confinement.
Okay.
I saw the intervention room. It was actually off to a corner close to where I gave the SAT classes, and they would basically, throughout their whole waking day, they would have to sit in a chair and sit in this room quietly and do Sudoku puzzles, and they would be playing Mormon Tabernacle choir music the whole time, which I thought was kind of crass, because it was going to ensure that they never liked that type of music again in their life. I thought that was just awful. And evidently that's where things really got bad. Things got bad when there was after like the staff that didn't live there left, and some students were telling me that at intervention, they were like, one girl was made to watch as two boys shat in the toilet. There's a toilet right there in the intervention room in front of them, and had diarrhea and all that. So there was a lot of, from 2 or 3 sources, the students mentioned this, that there was psychological torture of that sort going on. There was sleep deprivation. They would definitely do. There was also indications that you had some type of like blanket party where one of the upper level staff members with a chaperone and the PE teacher would get together and do a beat down on somebody.
Okay.
So anyhow, do you have any questions? It's a lot of information to get. It's a lot of information to get together, because it isn't like I was there seeing it happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
I understand.
And at this point, I was there for less than a year, by the way. I was fired in May next year, so we're talking from September to May. I didn't last too long. They definitely saw that I wasn't convenient for them.
Yeah.
Partly due to the supplementary reading and essay exercises I was giving them. A parent evidently wrote them and complained about the reading materials I was giving them.
Oh wow!
And I guess they looked into it, and they must have red flagged them as to oh, this isn't good, the type of ideas. And pretty much what they did is they accused me of being lewd with one of the girls, which wasn't true at all.
Okay.
They said, well, what did you tell Kayla? What she's saying. And then they said basically, okay, we'll go home for 3 days and then we'll talk about it. And well, with 1 day in, I saw my email account at the school was deleted. So I immediately went to a labor lawyer, because I knew that they had let me go, and sent the lawyer all the information. And 3 days in, I come back in, and they claimed that, I was supposed to come back the next day, and that's why they were firing me.
Okay.
So anyhow, months later, some of the students who had gotten out contacted me on Facebook and basically said that, yeah, they were trying to make Kayla claim that I molested her. There's no way in hell that could have ever happened because I was never actually alone with a student in a room.
Right.
I was always with the group and another thing is that I'm homosexual, so it's
Right. Right.
no way in freaking hell. But evidently, I was lucky that they weren't able to manipulate that situation further because I do think they were trying to frame me for that.
Yeah.
At the time.
For sure.
About a few weeks before I was fired, I was threatened because I had accidentally left my laptop unattended in the computer lab. And I was told not to do it because one of the students could get on it and send a message out. And then they could get shut down. And then all of a sudden I got this dirty look from the head of therapy, Amy Ritchie, saying, and if that ever happens, if you have anything to do with this school getting shut down, we're going to kill you. Like, we're going to, serious look. And I looked over at Nadia, who was the academic coordinator, and she nodded her head yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
I can tell you firsthand, it was a direct death threat. Now, I don't know if there was some hyperbole. Probably not, considering the fact that one of the chaperones was involved in human trafficking and had recently about maybe a couple months before, tried to talk me into driving people across the border hidden in a compartment in the car.
Can I ask the name of this person?
That particular person, that one, I'm down. I can tell you I'm going to tell you the first name.
Okay.
Lenin, as in Vladimir Lenin.
Okay.
Lenin. And since there evidently is an actual criminal network going on in this case, you can probably, have you in contact with any of the students?
I'm not, but I will be.
I will. I actually have some of them on Facebook. I'll be more than happy to direct them to you.
Okay, perfect.
There's some of them that are in the mindset of they just want to put this behind them and don't even talk about it. But there are some others that do want to do something about the situation.
Yeah. I mean, clearly, if you're setting up shop in Rosarita, you have connections to something that's bad. Particularly if you're doing something bad, you know.
Oh, yeah. If you're actually doing exactly, that's the point. Yeah, you can.
I mean, if you're smuggling, granted, I'm sure there are a lot of honest people in Rosarita, yeah, and doing great work. But if you're smuggling kids into a program that's kind of like falsely claiming its therapeutic nature, and you're basically, you're falsely claiming that you're educating kids, really, because this doesn't really sound like education to me.
And I was directly told by the academic coordinator that I was there mainly, I guess, when I was giving the supplementary material, she didn't want me to try so hard. She says, remember, the first priority is their behavior and their therapy. They come from messed up backgrounds, education. We just want them to get their high school diploma through this program. You're to help them along. Like, they didn't see that their actual education is really a priority at all.
Right.
I can tell you that.
Even though that's kind of what they're selling as the model anyway to the parents, most likely, The model is that your kids are going away to this place to learn. That's kind of, they're not able to learn where they are, so they're going to go away to this place to learn.
And yeah, there were about 2 other teachers there when we got there that worked in the computer lab. I was really the only one who had time with them in another place because I was given the SAT class. The other one teacher, she was also a college student, and she tried, but she ended up quitting there. Shortly after I got in. And the other teacher, who was the assistant to the academic coordinator, was supposed to be doing math and science. His name was Samuel.
Yep.
He did not live there either, but he also on purposely didn't want to have much. He must have known something, Right. But anyway, he didn't really do much to help or tutor. Yeah, he would explain some of the math and all that, but a lot of times I would be explaining all the way up to trig. Like I ended up doing even some of his job, which is weird because I don't stink at math really, but I'm not the most inclined. So I literally had to like help him out. I was like researching and relearning and teaching him the algebra and the geometry and all that. So yeah, there was definitely a school was not set up to even give them a decent education, even for a GED.
Right.
They were using this homeschool program that had kind of lax standards, and it was going through the state of Florida. And I'm sure they pick those programs to where they don't have to have, where they can actually just push the students through and not actually have any academic rigor.
No, I mean, like, it's just accreditation that site that you gave me. It's accreditation. That's all it is. It's like I pay $1,000 and I get accredited. You know? It's like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
the river. Sorry.
Oh, there you go. Sorry. It's good for some people who, as I said, have good support and they're good self-starters and all that, but not for them.
Yeah.
They needed hands-on classroom stuff.
Yeah. They need to be taught, like, by a teacher. So, were most of these students brought across the border illegally?
Good question. I thank you for reminding me on that. Well, let me give you a little background into the league. I consult with immigration with people actually, and let me tell you, initially it may have not technically been illegal because at the time you were allowed to cross in as a U.S. citizen without documenting yourself.
Okay.
But not live there. You're allowed to go in and have some beers, maybe stay a few days and go back. But the fact that they were actually studying there and living there, that in fact was illegal. They were getting their FM3 non-resident visas, but like months after they got there.
Yeah.
they were taking them. I even asked the students about that. I was like, yeah, I was taken to get my permission to be in Mexico. And I was like, did you have that when you came in? And he said, no, they're taking me now to get it. And,
right.
So yeah, a lot of them were brought in illegally, and there was even one that there was even a case, and I'm going to have to send you the link. There was a boy that was there for only 2 weeks.
Okay.
He was in the classroom 3 days. And then he suddenly disappeared. They sent him into intervention. I don't know why. He was like very well behaved actually. Well, after I got out, I'm looking online, and it turns out the father, without the mother's permission, took him down there. And the mother was online posting in forums, frantic, wanting to get him back, saying he was brought into Mexico illegally, and she didn't have my permission. Well, I think you and I both know that there is actually a law stating that if you have a child, even if you're married and things are fine, if only one parent's bringing that child into Mexico, they technically need to have permission from the other parent. Especially if the child is not a Mexican citizen. This kid was brought into Mexico without the other parent's permission. I think they were divorced. But there was all this frantic stuff online posted from the lady needing help. And evidently she had contacted the school and ended up demanding he go back. And I think that's why he went into intervention, and then they let him go. Because I think they knew that was going to be a legal problem. But yes, there were people being transported down there illegally. 3 or 4 students have told me recently that they were given sedatives. With the drugs. Who knows? Sedatives can be anything. It could be something strong or mild, but they woke up in Mexico, and then they were still high on the sedatives when they were being processed there. So a lot of them were drugs to be brought across the border. What else? Others were just simply tricked, saying they were going to go on vacation.
Yeah.
So anyhow, yes, there was all this stuff going on at the time, probably still going on.
I'm going to ask you a few other questions, if that's okay. Just hold on a second.
Sure.
Just grab my notes. So, what, are the phone calls monitored? Do you know?
With the students, like when they call home,
Yeah.
I was told that they were, yes, that there's usually a staff member right there by them.
Right. Okay.
And letters were definitely monitored going in and out. So,
Okay.
yeah, there was definitely, they didn't have any privacy really with contacting, parents from what I understand.
Right.
I think they were allowed some time alone to talk with their parents when they had seminars. And there was these monthly seminars. Evidently, the parents were expected to pay large sums of money for this lady named Ruth to come in and give them these pep talks that kind of. I went to a sample of that. They had one for the staff, and it looked like a Amway or a Quick Star meeting, but multi-level marketing. There was really nothing of substance. But they would go to these seminars, and the kids would get some time to talk with the parents. But evidently, the parents were always told, remember your child's lying, they're manipulating. They had the psychologists there were also working their bullshit on the parents to make them think everything was okay. So,
was there a psychiatrist or doctor service on site?
Okay, there was a doctor there at the office. His office was right by the academic office. His name was Dr. Habib Bechelani Curry.
Okay.
And now, yes, there was medical attention given when they were sick and all that. I could tell you that. And I never had any vibes either way about him. I mean, we always had friendly, small talk chats at work and all that, but I didn't have much contact with him. But some of the students indicated that the ones that had, prescriptions for Adderall or Ritalin, there was a little thing going on where they would steal the pills and just give the kids sugar pills. And couple of the chaperones and the doctors were taking them and selling them on the black market. So a lot of the kids' medications were being stolen and resold.
Right.
A lot of the controls, I'm sure a lot of the benzos they were being given, because some of them were on some heavy meds.
Sure, and they were also on some meds that were pretty street valued as well.
Right, from what I understand in the United States, like the Adderall and Ritalin, you're talking at least a few bucks a pill, or I don't know.
Yeah, at least. Yeah.
And if they're taking between all those students, they were probably getting hundreds a week.
Sure. What outside contact with community, was there any between students? I mean, were they able to go out in their community at all?
Interesting. Some of the the highest level students would be allowed to go on controlled outings to the beach or horseback riding, but there was no interaction with the Mexican community, the local community whatsoever. There was no meaningful interaction actually with the culture or anything. And most of the students never got to level 5. I think that was the top level, the highest level. So, yeah, I can tell you now, a lot of them did end up learning a lot of Spanish. That was that might have been the only positive educational thing really to come out of it, because they were immersed in Spanish.
Right.
But they definitely didn't get to meet anybody outside the school.
Okay.
At all.
What about food? Where did the food come from? Was it from a large corporation or a local business? Donations?
Oh, you mean the school itself?
Yeah, for the food that the students ate, where did that food come from?
Okay, that's a good question. From what I understand, I ate the same food that they ate, at least for lunch, at least for breakfast and lunch. That was part of the package. I'd go in and I would go in I assumed the school was actually buying it, if they had a budget. That was a part of their, they had a food budget. One thing I noticed, though, is that by the end, there was like always a period of 5 days in a row where for breakfast it would always just be rice, hot rice and milk with cinnamon or oatmeal and nothing else. So definitely they were skimping. At the beginning and middle of the month, the food was actually pretty decent. They would actually do once a week a regional dish from Mexico and all that. But it seemed like they had it set up to where for about a whole week they were getting enough to fill themselves, but it was not balanced. A lot of like processed carbs and all that.
Right.
For like a week straight, and it was kind of obvious. And I'm not a picky eater, but I can tell you, even as an adult, I was.
Okay, so yeah.
So the food source, I mean, I'm not 100% sure where it came from, but I do know there was always a tight period of the month where the quality wasn't good. Right there. So they were probably they probably were given a food budget that was enough for them to do proper meals for 3 weeks out of the month, and then the 4th week they cut back and do basic starches, and there weren't you didn't have like the balance with the meat and the soup or it would be like potatoes and.
So the nutritionist that they advertised in that video you sent me, which is their kind of commercial, the nutritionist that they say is on site, that's not really actually happening, is it?
That's not actually happening. No. I'm sure they might have consulted with somebody off-site or whatnot.
Right.
Because for most of the month, the meals were actually, I would consider decent for anybody. But there was that week though where there was just a lot. They were giving them the calories, but not the vitamins and proteins and all that. It was just like starch stuff, starchy.
Yeah. It's just so terrible. So were the upper levels given more food or access to food than the lower levels? Were lower levels denied food? If you were on in intervention, were you denied food?
From what I understand, they were intervention food was brought to them. I saw trays being brought to them, but evidently they weren't. From what I was told from the students, that it wasn't as much, or they wouldn't have, and all that. And as far as any extra food, I think upper levels did get extra access to snacks. All the students eventually would get like extra snacks, like after PE and all that. But the upper levels were given extra privileges, such as being able to have extra snack foods maybe in their room.
Right.
Twinkies or chips or whatnot. So in that way, I do know they were given extra food. Being upper level, there were enough incentives and privileges to brainwash some of them into playing along with the whole deal.
Sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, you're a kid in fucking Mexico. What choice do you have? So, what were there any toiletries denied or like granted to upper levels? Were upper levels allowed extra toiletries or anything like that?
I do know the upper level girls were allowed more time for hair grooming and products and on all that. For the males, I am not sure on that end.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure due to the gender difference on that might account for it. But I did see the upper levels like grooming each other's hair and all that stuff. Something that the lower levels wouldn't be able to do, and they would have access to like I guess curling iron, conditioner, and things like that.
Right.
But I only twice have I ever actually seen inside of one of their barracks rooms and all that, so I did not have much contact as far as their residential arrangement goes.
Okay.
But I did see the hair grooming with the upper levels in the middle of the day.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I don't know really how much more I want to ask you. I do want to ask you what you think a different solution could be for this, or how we can stop this play. I mean, what do you think is?
All right. Well, I know saying that Mexico sounds hopeless, but it actually is. And I'm now a Mexican citizen, by the way. I naturalized last year. I'm living in a much nicer part of the country. Very low crime here.
Okay.
But anyhow, law enforcement, as far as, it's very easy that they could have paid off local and maybe state law enforcement. But it's not like, but a lot of the federal end runs a lot differently. And if you know, the soldiers are actually the ones that do the dirty work and confront the cartels and all that. The military. The military is actually the least corrupt institution there is for that. And if you look up Casa by the Sea, Google that.
Yeah.
That was a school that was shut down in that was actually an immigration raid. So it is possible to get it stopped. However, we need to have, as far as the students that were there when I was there, as far as there was some like quasi-sexual abuse going on. I mean, a girl being forced to watch two guys shit out diarrhea, even maybe it wasn't directly sexual, that's considered, forcing a child to do a lewd act that could possibly be for the gratification, or they're in California code. They could, since the corporation is incorporated in San Isidro, California, in the U.S. and in Mexico as the same name, but like in the United States, there's Sunset Bay Academy LLC. Okay, so the current students could do civil action, probably on the U.S. and maybe even the Mexican side they could do it. But in order to actually get immediate action, we need to have recent students actually come forward and actually go into Tijuana, not necessarily Tijuana, Mexicali or Rosarito, actually go into one of the federal police offices, like a Procuraduría Federal de la República, like the district attorney for the nation, and actually formally file a complaint. They need to actually take that step for the Mexican and for that to happen. If they're still being brought in illegally or living there illegally, that could be done through immigration. And actually, I could be the one to file the complaint if a recent student were willing to actually provide names of students currently in, and to actually send me an email stating their names, how long they've been there, and that they do not have any legal immigration status. I would go down here in the Merida to the federal subdelegation, and I would actually directly put in the complaint.
Right.
No problem at all. I mean, that would be under my name even. That would be fine.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a little bit about the immigration system now. It's changed. Now everybody's checked when they're going into Mexico, when they go into the foreign line. It's not like before where you could just stroll in. So the newer students going in will be given what's known as the FMM form. The FMM form is good for a maximum of 6 months.
Okay.
But it doesn't give you permission to study or do anything other than maybe rent a place and be a tourist and hang out. So probably what they're doing now is they're paying the $30 to get them the FMM form, and then maybe every 6 months they're taking them across and having them cross again and getting another one. But since they are presumably at school, that is not legal. They are misusing the tourist visa. Well, not the kid, but the institution is misusing the tourist visas for all those kids.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure if that's exactly. With my knowledge of the immigration system, as I'm sure that's how they're probably doing it right now. I doubt that they have a Mexican student green card at this time. So if we can get enough, maybe just 2 or 3 people, to give me the information, or not just myself, it could be anybody in Tijuana or here in Merida, anywhere in Mexico, they could put in the complaint, and that could possibly trigger an immigration inspection, and if you couple it with the abusive allegations with civil law enforcement, that could trigger an immigration/law enforcement action on them.
Right.
But it's got to be at the federal level, because you know for sure that they've got they're not in Rosarito anymore, by the way. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Okay. I did a little research after we had spoken, and they've moved 2 times since I left there, by the way. They'd gotten a nicer place closer to the beach in Rosarito. Well, they closed down there.
Okay.
They changed the name of their corporation, the Mexican corporation, by the way.
Okay.
And they moved to Playas at Tijuana, which is I don't know if you've ever been here, but it's Tijuana Beach where you have the bull ring, and there's that big lighthouse there. Well,
Yeah.
the school is about maybe 6 blocks from there. Yeah, I know the area. I mean, I'm not there right now, but I used to go. So their actual address has changed, and I can send you that information. They're no longer in Rosarito right now. I did more research, and I could send you the documents. But there was one student managed to escape, and a few years ago, and make a sexual abuse allegation. And the Rosarito Police Department evidently had inspected the school and had him under investigation.
Right.
It's all in Spanish, and there's even the police report from when like 066 or 911 was called, and I can send that to you. I found it. It's all in Spanish.
Yeah.
I could give it. Can you read Spanish?
No, but
I can give an abstract. Yeah, I'll give it to you, and that may be why they moved out of Rosarito. I think that's probably. I think that is. It coincides. They shut down and they moved everybody into Tijuana, which is a different local jurisdiction. So evidently they were about to get in. They knew that they were going to get in trouble if they stayed there.
Right.
Which is why anything you have to make sure that any complaint put in has to be federal.
Right.
Federal law enforcement.
Of course. Yeah, because they don't have jurisdiction; they can just move. Yeah.
Right. And also they're not as easily corruptible. You might be able to You might be able to bribe 1 or 2 federal officers that have jurisdiction, but they didn't bribe the colonel at the battalion, who can also act. And that's why the Mexico cartel thing is so complicated, because you have so many different actors. But that's actually an advantage when it comes to dealing with this program.
Right.
So,
well, Eric, I really want to thank you for coming on. I mean, as a survivor, I could only wish that some of my staff members would be brave enough to do this, and they so far haven't been. I've lost a few. And go ahead.
I know I rambled a bit, because a lot of it's putting together I remember everything, but there's just so much. There's so many, and actually if you think of any more questions, I'll be more than, some of your questions were jogging my memory actually. But there's so much going on, and let me tell you, I regret not putting in the complaint at least after I had been fired at the time. I mean, I am truly sorry, and for any SBA students who are listening, I apologize. I should have done something at the time, even though
you're awesome, Eric.
It would have been very risky, and that's why I'm coming forward right now, and I can help in the effort in any way I can. As I said, I'm a Mexican citizen. I currently teach at a junior high, a normal school, not a program. I now have a certification to teach English, believe it or not, and I've actually had courses on psychology and psychopedagogy and all that other stuff. So now I even understand more of the evils that were going on there at the time.
Right.
By the way, one more detail. The psych director, the therapy director, was apparently in a sexual relationship with one of the upper levels.
Okay.
Well, I had always suspected it, because they spent it was only that one girl. Only that one girl was spending a lot of time in Amy's office. A lot of time. None of the others.
Was this can you name the director or whoever this was who might have been assaulting a child? Don't name the child, please, but
No.
name
Yeah,
and address?
I think I know the Amy Ritchie, and I'd only suspected, and I wouldn't have even mentioned it if it hadn't have been the student. One of the former students gave me your phone number or your contact information, by the way.
Yeah.
That one and another one mentioned that Amy and the other tried to get a different student to a threesome. Won't mention the other student either, but yes, that was, since I've heard it now from a couple, and I got that vibe. That was it. You just couldn't put your finger on it. There most definitely was a relationship going on, and I think that upper level when it started was 17 or 18, but it's still illegal due to the guardian relationship.
Yes.
Whether in Mexico
and wrong.
And wrong, because you have that authority figure, you know.
Yeah, it's just everything about it is wrong. This is supposed to be a therapeutic environment, supposedly, where parents are sending their kids. Everything about this is wrong. Everything. It's disgusting. Anyway, I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm going to end it there. If you are listening to this and you are a survivor, please feel free to reach out to Reddit Troubled Teens or WWASP Survivors. We're here. We believe you. We will side with you. And please like and subscribe to this channel. And I thank you very much for tuning in. It's short.